And joining us right now, though, to talk about where we stand, political strategist and pollster Frank Luntz, someone we have been going to throughout this election season. Frank, I said earlier that maybe it's not surprising that we don't have the answer as of now. We've said for weeks that it's unlikely we would, though obviously in the 24 to 48 hours ahead of the election, some of the polls seem to suggest that maybe we'd get a quicker answer, and I think the markets were potentially even betting on that. Are you surprised at the outcomes that we've seen thus far?
My single biggest surprise is not something that you guys have been talking about, which is that it looks right now that the Republicans will keep control of the Senate. And that did not look the same way 48 hours ago. My second biggest surprise is that the pollsters at CNN and a few other places have not apologized for numbers that are completely wrong. That it appears that, it's still, by the way, it still appears that when all the votes are counted, Joe Biden is the next president. But that has not been confirmed. And the third surprise is that people have not been more insistent on telling individuals, calm down, let every voice be heard, let every vote be counted, that we don't rush to a decision, we accept whatever has happened in the election. And I'm surprised that there hasn't been more of a public discussion of that over the last, frankly, over the last 12 hours.
Frank, let me just ask you, because you did make a comment that you thought the numbers pointed towards a Biden victory. And of course, we will stipulate here that we still are counting those votes and do not have such an answer. But walk us through the path that would get you there, given the states that are still up for grabs.
So if you can put a state map up, I can go state by state with you. In the end, Nevada ends up in the Democratic camp, and some networks have called it. Some have called Arizona as well, so you'd have to add those two states. And then I'm watching the numbers out there. I think Georgia goes for Trump. I think North Carolina goes for Trump. But the three critical states, and Donald Trump would have to win two of them at this point, are Pennsylvania, where he has a clear lead, and Michigan and Wisconsin, who will be much more difficult for him. We could have a situation, I think the most likely outcome is that whoever wins with less than 280 electoral votes, which means they're only one state away on either side, much closer than any of the polling indicated. Biden has the advantage because he is either leading or tied in Michigan, in Wisconsin. He has won, again, to most network reports, he has won both Nevada and Arizona. So the path to 270 is more clear, and there are more different ways to take it for Joe Biden and Donald Trump, but you cannot count Trump out, which is his frustration yesterday, that he's clearly watching the different networks, and he's clearly upset that some of them are suggesting that the race is over, and it is not. And I think we're going to go another 6, maybe 12 hours today before we have a clear distinction between them.
Hey, Frank, you bring up the point that the polls were wrong. They showed a much wider margin for Biden in so many of these states. And when we spoke with you yesterday, you said if the polls got it wrong again this time around, after missing it 4 years ago, that you thought it was kind of the end for the polling industry. How would you clarify or maybe judge that today based on what we're seeing, at least in the states that have been called?
Well, how do you explain CNN having a 12-point margin for Joe Biden, which will be nowhere near that when all the votes are counted? Even the most optimistic people on Biden's side say it'll be less than half that. That's not within the margin of error. That's simply being wrong. And the average numbers of all the polls had Joe Biden up by about 8%. And when it's all done, it looks like at best, he'll have a 4% margin. But in addition to the polls, I think we're going to have to eventually start to have this conversation, and I'm not taking sides, about the Electoral College, to have two situations back to back where one person wins the popular vote and somebody else wins the Electoral College. I don't want to challenge the Constitution, and I'm not sure where I stand myself, but twice in a row and 3 times in the last 20 years suggest that we're going to have to look at our entire voting system to decide whether it's appropriate at this point, at this stage in our country's history.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.